When you think of someone who is a saint and a doctor of the church, you probably think of someone who lives a long holy life, who was groomed from a young age in the teaching of the church, who never held heretical belief or committed terrible sin. You probably don't think of someone who spent 33 years as a heretic, had a child out of wedlock, and whose most famous prayer is, "Lord, make me chaste, just not yet." And yet, that is our Saint Augustine. Augustine, one of the most important theologian and leader in the church history. He lived tumultuous early life, but ending up saving the church from two major controversies, and it's currently a saint you should know. This is the Agustinian student. Listen to us. Few saints can say they experience more carnal pressure and shallow expoliate than Agustine. Born in 354 of November 13 to a Christian mother, Agustine has no interest in religion in his early life, moving instead to Carthage to study hermeneutic and enjoy the temptation of the big city. At some points along the way, he did have a religious conversion, but exactly the one hoping for. Seeking answer to life's deep question, but indignant at the image of God he saw in the Old Testament, but become attracted to the religion of Manichaeism, agnostic religion that focused on the struggle between good and evil forces. For Augustine, dualism having a powerful for evil force. How to explain how God could be good and evil exist in the world, but more importantly, why he felt so much evil within himself, having made so far many mistakes, particularly for sexual nature. It was comforting to think that some powerful in mind lay behind it. Fortunately, Augustine and the church through his life with the Manichaeans and would end up being short-lived. In 384, at the age of 30, he was appointed as the professor of hermeneutic in the Milan, where he would meet his match Saint Ambrose, the bishop of the city and the powerful orator. Ambrosius was familiar with the Manichaeans and knew how to exfoliate their flaws. Trained to hermeneutic, but also philosophy, he introduced Augustine to the Neo-Platonic. Popular at that time among Christians, intellectuals offering him entirely new ways to deal with the problem of evil. Augustine eventually became a Christian, baptized by Ambrose in Milan in 387, and planned to live a quiet of study and prayer. As a Quaximach, shortly after his baptism, he traveled to Hippo to recruit members of his monastery. He arrived, he was surrounded by the congregation, seized and dragged to the bishop. Who gets this? Ordinate himself on the spot. Sometimes that sounds obviously extraordinary to us today, but was actually kind of normal back then. He eventually became the bishop of Hippo himself, turned the bishop quarter into a monastery, requiring his priests to take oaths of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and live happily ever after, studying and praying with no controversies whatsoever.
An historical context during the time of Saint Augustine. In the Roman Empire, wherein the widespread growth of Christianity takes place, Constantine in 312 AD gave Christianity a legal status in the empire by passing the Edict of Milan. His successors also passed other edicts as a serious attempt to wipe out paganism. 4 types of controversies, and these are Donatism, Pelagianism, Mechanism, and Arianism. Let's talk about Donatism. Donatism, founded by Donatus Magnus, this controversy can be traced back to the time of Diocletian persecution in 303 and 305. The most severe and widespread persecution was under Diocletian in the year AD 303 and 305. Those who did so were called traditores, derived from the Latin word tradere, or to hand over by other Christians. Lepsi traditores. They are Christians who persecuted, displayed weakness in the face of torture by banishment, forced labor, and death. Pelagianism. Pelagianism was founded by Pelagius. This Christian heresy was named after Pelagius, born in CA 350 and had a good family standing. Pelagius stressed the essential goodness of human nature and the freedom of human will. Implication of Pelagius' claims: God's grace is not needed, otherwise men would not be free anymore, since God's grace would dictate what to do. He insisted that God made human beings free to choose good and evil. Manichaeism. Manichaeism, founded by Mani, who claimed to be the paraclete Jesus, promised to send to his followers in John 14:26. The 2 types of Manichaean members: 1. Elect, committed to a missionary life of poverty and asceticism, had the obligation to pray for the hearers who incurred sin due to their connection to the sinful world. 2. Hearers. Hearers were allowed to have a wife or a husband. They did not eat meat and drink wine. Arianism. Arianism, founded by Arius, his basic teaching around the uniqueness of God, who is alone self-existent and immutable. Implications. Jesus Christ, considered as the Son of the Father and the second person of the Trinity, that he was not God because only God was unoriginated. Arius undermined the Christian concept of redemption, since only he who was the truly God could reconcile humanity to the Godhead, that the Nicene Creed was approved and the Arianism was proscribed.
The social context during the time of Augustine of Hippo. Did you all know that Agustine was an African in origin, but Roman in culture and education? Yes, yet his family enjoyed the privileges of Roman citizenship that was categorized between the honestores, the wealthiest in society, and the humiliores, the lower social status. Augustine's family was belonged to the class of honestores. During the early centuries, Latin was the only language mastered by Augustine at home, and at the age of 17, he went to Carthage to study in rhetoric. On the year of 391, Augustine was ordained priest by Bishop Valerius. He possessed generous and strong constitution. His influence extended to the domains of philosophy, dogmatics, mystical theology, social life and welfare, and the last one is the public prudence. He was the greatest craftsman of the Western of the Middle Ages, the Patrologia. Augustine was consecrated as bishop by Bishop Megalius in the year of 395. In the year of 386, Augustine has intention to receive his baptism to carry such a holy enterprise and started making a plan to set up as a monastery. After his baptism in 387 and mourning for the death of his mother in Austria, Augustine returned to his home in Tagaste in the year of 388, bringing up what he learned while he is in Rome. Augustine abandoned fasting, praying, performing good works, and meditating upon the law of the Lord. And he introduced studying, teaching, and writing. For him, serving God was the essential characteristic of the monastic life.
Saint Augustine say about life? Pray as though everything depended on God. Work as though everything depended on you. Faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward of this faith is to see what you believe. Since love grows within you, so beauty grows. What makes Saint Augustine unique? Founded in 1565, Saint Augustine is the oldest continuously occupied settlement of European and African America, originating in the United States 42 years before the English colonized Jamestown and 50 years before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. The Spanish established at St. Augustine argued that skeptics have no basis for claiming to know that there is no knowledge, and he believed that genuine human knowledge can be established with certainty. He believed reason to be a uniquely human connective capacity that comprehends deductive truths and logical necessity.
This is the Agustinian students. Thank you for your listening.